Hey everyone, Thyworm here with a video on power leveling in solo self-found. Definitely not a video I thought I would ever make, but here we are, because quite honestly it's ridiculous. Without preparing much at all, I leveled an ice trap trickster from level 1 to level 95 in 13 hours. And in this video I will explain everything. Let's dive in. In the past, power leveling in Path of Exile in solo self-found wasn't a real option, at least to my knowledge. You had leveling services in trade, which primarily meant you were taken into a 5-way legion farm in exchange for a few divines. I never did that back in the day, but to my knowledge that's really all the power leveling that existed. Sure, some strategies give you more XP than others, that's very true, but generally I feel 5-way legions or maybe running breachstones with a group were your options. The closest we got in SSF is, I think, solo running breachstones. I can't think of content that is more boring, honestly. This league, Necropolis, GGG introduced a few new fun things. Scarabs, Embers and Omens. And these have opened up a whole new world in terms of leveling. And for the record, I'm not claiming I came up with this strategy. I saw it in a YouTube video short of Subtractem, who also included an atlas tree. I tried that out, tested a few things, changed a few more things, and was ultimately so impressed by what I found that I wanted to share this strategy with all of you, including the things that I learned along the way, which are plenty. There is one mandatory prerequisite that you need to have, and then a few optional ones to take really full advantage of the strategy. The one mandatory prerequisite is having the Domination Scarab of Teachings, which states, Shrine buffs in area also grant 30% increased experience gained. Then optional, but definitely useful, are Omens of Brilliance, which states, will be consumed when you level up to grant 100% increased experience gained for 60 seconds. And also optional, but also very useful, are the Embers with Untainted Beasts. If you've ever ran the Untainted Paradise map, which you can spawn from Kirak missions, you know how much experience these Untainted monsters provide. Using these Embers, you can fill regular maps with Untainted monsters, which is very nice. The basic idea of this strategy is twofold. 1. You get as many experience buffs on you as humanly possible. 2. You get as many monsters in a map as humanly possible, and you kill all of them. It's pretty simple. But if it was just that, why make a video, right? There is a lot of nuances to all of this, in my opinion, which is why I am making this video, but it's good to keep the basics in mind. First, let's take a closer look at the items that we use to increase our experience gains. Starting with the Domination Scarab of Teachings, which provides a flat 30% experience if you have a shrine buff on you. So that means you must make sure there are enough shrines in the map to click on, and you need to make sure that the shrine buffs last as long as possible. This also means that the map modifier buffs expire faster on players completely cucks your strategy, as you can see in this footage. The timer of the buffs runs down like crazy. It looks like it is sped up, but it's not. It's real-time footage and the shrine buffs are gone after like 20 seconds. The strategy when entering a map is therefore to make your way to a shrine ASAP and only then start killing monsters. Don't get killed though on your way to the shrine, that is clearly not worth it. Finally, what this means as well is that you should keep a bit of an eye on the buff timers, and ideally you always have a shrine active on you throughout clearing the map. This becomes quite an interesting game where you're tracking timers, killing monsters, clicking new shrines, opening more breaches, etc. I found it quite enjoyable actually. Our second item, which is optional, are Omens. I saved up a bunch because that's just what I do in solo self-found. I tend to save a bunch of items without a clear goal in mind, just for the off chance they do come in useful, and in this case they did. The Omen of Brilliance gives you 100% XP for 1 minute after leveling up, and especially if you're making your way from, let's say, level 70 to level 90, this really adds up. Of course, theoretically it works as well after level 90, I get that, but it feels much less powerful as leveling after level 90 requires much more experience. Getting to 90 quick is great for the passive points, the stats you get, and it overall just feels good. So if you have these laying around, use them before you reach level 90, that is my advice. The final item I used, another optional choice, were Embers. As you can see, I'm also saving these for another video. All the untapped tainted embers that I used however for this video. I would put these on high pack size monsters only, as they are quite rare. You're not likely to have 100 of these lying around, so pick your monster packs wisely. These are the items that I used, but what about the rest? Well, I also experimented with the Atlas tree and with some of the Scarabs. Let's tackle the Atlas tree. At first, I went for an Atlas tree which juiced the pack size to the max, thinking it was a good idea to get as many humongous packs in the maps as humanly possible. I ran 8 mod corrupted maps as well. Now, of course, this depends on how strong your build is, but I started mapping at like level 67, and what happened to me is that I got killed quite a few times because of the map modifiers, which were out of control, and because the monsters were simply really dangerous. And I think that sort of defeats the purpose, honestly. Dying is problematic because you lose all your buffs and XP bonuses, plus you lose of course 10% XP. It's also not very fun to die. And why would you completely juice out maps for a leveling strategy, right? So I stopped speccing into map explicit modifiers on the Atlas, and I also didn't run corrupted maps anymore. Then I checked if there were more synergies with experience. And one thing you will notice is that specifically Abyss has an Atlas passive node which increases monsters experience and monsters spawn. So I specced into that for a bit, I tried it out, but while I enjoy Abyss as a mechanic, it's not all that fun to chase a bunch of underground activity. It takes a long time, you don't get nearly as many monsters as you would get in Breach, so while it looks promising, Abyss also was off the table. It is simply not worth the investment. What is left was focusing on Breach, Delirium, Beyond, focusing on keeping the map modifiers in check, focusing on not dying, and focusing basically on a friction-free leveling experience. In terms of the maps that I ran, I would advise to just run easy, rare maps. There's really no need to go crazy on pack size or whatnot. Just pick something that you will have an easy time running. Breach contains so many monsters, it's crazy even in white maps. Focus on survival rather than pack size. I learned that the hard way. For Scarabs, you need the Domination Scarab of Teachings. Furthermore, you can either use Domination Scarabs to get more shrines, or Breach Scarabs to get more breaches, and then pick either Domination or Breach on the map device. Ultimately, I think it makes more sense to be on the safe side, so I would rather have more shrines than breaches so I don't die, and the XP bonus is always available. Let's talk about the Atlas passive tree and the choices that I made. The reasoning behind most of the choices I just covered in the strategy section, so let me highlight some of the nodes, starting with what I do not take and the reasons why. I do not take any nodes that increase the map explicit modifiers, because that makes the maps super rippy, which is counterproductive to our goal. I also don't take any either Exarch or Maven nodes, because you likely will not be running tier 14 plus maps for a while when power leveling. I also don't take item quantity or too many of the Scarab nodes, as this strategy simply isn't about getting loot or Scarabs. Then what I am taking is the following. First, I'm blocking a bunch of league mechanics I am not willing to encounter, simply because I like to have focus and I don't want to run into a random harvest. Then I take the bottom left league mechanic nodes, because devoted modifiers can also be monsters that have increased experience, and you want as many of those at the highest tiers possible. We're taking the Nicotech, of course, as always, packed with energy. We're taking the shrine nodes, of course, because we need shrines to activate the Scarab. I wouldn't opt into all that glitters, because covetous shrines make you take more damage, which is not what you want. And then the focus is on 3 league mechanics that produce a shit ton of monsters to kill. First, Breach, where we're taking nodes that increase monster density and spawn chance. I'm specifically opting into Heavy Breach, which makes breaches open and close much slower, giving you a chance to kill as many monsters as possible. Unless you have a god tier build, I would consider this node mandatory. We combine the Breach madness with Beyond, specifically focusing on merge radius and chance to attract demons. The keystone Endless Tide makes sure that Beyond is active in the whole map and that no bosses will spawn. As we are speccing so much into Beyond, you might as well take Fiendish Opulence, because tainted currency is always welcome in SSF. And the third and final league mechanic is Delirium, adding a grey layer of goo on the map, which combined with my Ice Trap Trickster makes this whole gameplay completely incomprehensible. So if you're wondering what the hell is going on in my footage, trust me, you're not the only one. Imagine actually playing this. Delirium, however, also adds many monsters, which is the whole point once again. By using Unending Nightmare, the Delirium never dissipates. The rest of the nodes focus on the chance to spawn Delirium, which is now at 100%. I had a few points left in the tree which I spent on Scarabs. You can pick anything really. I'm ending the video with a few pro tips. 1. An important part of leveling is not dying, as I already mentioned, so play it safe, something I did not always do. It's much better to play it safe and having to run one more map to achieve the same level than risking a bunch of deaths in juiced up maps. Your only goal is to reach a high level, which you can do in easy maps, so run those easy maps. 2. Something I also didn't do, but in hindsight could recommend, is preparing upfront for the leveling. I reached level 95 in 13 hours, which is respectable I would say for solo self-found. But you can be much faster, depending of course how fast you clear the campaign and how much of an experienced player you are. Because included in those 13 hours were me looking at the build guide, messing around with passive points, figuring out which gear I wanted to wear, doing a bit of crafting, figuring out where I stored my omens and embers, rolling maps, dying in way too rippy maps. You get what I'm saying. If you prepare all the things that I just mentioned up front, which is a little bit of a sweaty strategy, but okay, then you can make this one of the smoothest and most enjoyable leveling experiences you ever had. For my next character, if I play another one, I am definitely prepping more up front. 3. I think after level 95, where leveling takes exponentially more XP, the omen you want to start using is the omen of amelioration. Amelioration? Amelioration. It prevents you from losing 10% XP when you die and only causes you to lose 2.5% XP. It is a much better choice than any of the other omens at this point, as it will take, even with this strategy, a long time to level. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, let me know what you think, and if you have discovered any other broken leveling tricks, I will pin them in the comments, let me know. Subscribe and like for more Path of Exile solo self-found content. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all, see you soon, bye bye.